In Inquiry 5.1, we're going to observe what happens when air masses meet. Our question for this lab is going to be what happens when two of the same and then two different air masses meet. So what we're going to be looking at is, using our convection tubes again, we're going to be looking at two cold air masses. Then we're going to look at one cold and one hot moist air mass, and then we're going to look at one cold versus one warm and dry air mass. Okay, so the materials we're going to be using in this lab, you will need to list here in this box. Those materials are, of course, our convection tubes. Let me just show you. I'm going to switch over to the webcam view. We have our convection tubes like we used in the last lab. Ms. Forsman, can you point those out? Okay, we have our convection tubes. We have them connected this time.
Ice.
Yeah, we have 2 cups of ice right now for our first observations. We'll also have a cup of hot water for a later investigation, and also a tea candle.
And we have the tubing that connects the 2 convection tubes.
Yes. Okay, so those are the materials you would need to list in that box. Okay, for our procedures, we're going to be following basically the same steps with each trial. On the first trial, we're going to put a container of ice under each convection tube, and then we're going to watch or make observations of the air currents. And the second time through, we will have our cup of ice under one convection tube and a cup of hot water under the other. And again, we'll make observations. And then for the third trial that we do, we will have a cup of ice under one of the convection tubes and a lit tea candle under the other convection tube. Okay, and each time we're going to be making observations of how the air circulates. Okay, so the things that we're going to keep the same, you need to think about those and list those here. And what will we be changing in this experiment? So think about what we just discussed. You can pause the video if you'd like to, so that you can record your thoughts before we move on to collecting data. Okay, before we collect our data, we have our data table. Instead of doing a hypothesis on this lab, you're going to be making your predictions right here. So before we begin, you need to make a prediction about what you think will happen to the air when we have crushed ice in both convection tubes. So make your prediction here before you actually see the experiment. Then make a prediction on the middle row for what you think will happen when we have hot water and hot water. And then on the third row, you're going to make your predictions about what you think will happen when we have the tea candle under one of the convection tubes and crushed ice under the other. And then while we're doing the experiment, you're going to record your observations of what actually happened to the air in this last column of your data table. Okay, let's go ahead and switch over to the experiment. We already have here cups of ice under each convection tube. Okay,
if you can see, there's crushed ice under each one. And now what I'm going to do is I'm going to light the stick and put smoke down here. I'm going to put it in each one so you can see where the smoke goes, and because that's what will happen to the air.
Okay, if you can see, the smoke is kind of just hanging around above the cold air. the heat is rising. It's not being allowed to move downward into the cold chambers of the convection tube. Oops. You can see all the smoke is billowing up. Let me try it with the light off.
Maybe they can see a little, I don't know. Can you see it?
I don't know if I can see the smoke very well or not. Where's our flashlight?
Can you see?
I don't think you can. I thought we could see it better with the lights on. The smoke is hanging right above the ice, and now it seems to be being pulled down into this bottom chamber. And it's just kind of hanging around.
Let's see if I can see.
Yeah.
It's hard to see with the
Yeah, I think down
thing
here on the actual big cup down here, you can kind of see it hanging around over the top.
Yeah,
it's not
you can
really
see,
moving, it's staying still.
There you go. You can see it a little bit. It's just kind of hanging over inside the tube, like it won't go down into the cold because the air from the stick is too warm and it wants to rise.
Okay, go back to your data table and make your observations about what happened. And I'm going to pause the video for a moment while we switch over to our hot water under each. Okay, now we're going to resume where we have hot water under each of the convection tubes. Okay, right now it looks a little foggy because of the steam from that warm, moist heat. Okay, the smoke is moving down the convection tube and is circulating all around inside of the bottom of the convection tube, the bottom chamber.
It's hard to see because it's
fogged up, but the smoke is just swirling around inside of this tube and also swirling around over the hot water in this tube.
Let's see if I can get a little closer.
It's a little foggy, but you can, in person, you can really see the smoke swirling around.
You can see it a little bit.
Yeah, you can kind of see it swirling.
Yeah.
When it was cold in there, the smoke was just staying completely still, but now you can really see it swirling around. Mm-hmm. Yeah, you can see it swirling. Okay, I'm going to stop and go back to our data for just a moment. Okay, we are going to pause the video for a moment while we set up the tea candle under one convection tube and crushed ice under the other. Okay, now we're going to resume with the tea candle under one of the convection tubes and crushed ice under the other.
Okay. I'm going to put a stick down here, get some smoke going.
Okay, the smoke is coming downward and being pulled towards the ice.
Okay. Let's put on this one.
Okay. The smoke at this moment is all trying to push up out of the chimney part of the convection tube and is not being pulled downward. It's all coming back out the top because of the heat source down below, I'm sure. And you can see in this picture all
Yeah.
of the smoke is kind of pulling down and hovering around
And
the
then
ice.
it's pulling through the tube, and then it's going back up through this other one where the candle is.
Let me see if I can show with the flashlight what's happening in this little tube. From the cold side, the smoke is being pulled through and coming up and out this other tube
Yeah, it's still
above the
smoking.
candle. Okay, so what you need to be comparing this to is what you think happens when maybe a tropical storm, a hurricane, or a tornado might occur, where those
Yeah, you can
warm
see it
air
good now.
and cold air meet.
Can you see where that
Yeah.
smoke is coming out of the tube?
Smoke's just pouring out of this tube into this chamber and coming straight up the chimney. Let's pull back for a second. I don't know how much time we have left on this video. The smoke is hovering here, being pulled through this tube, and when it gets into this chamber, it's coming up the chimney. I guess that's what you would call that. Okay, so make your observations about what's happening to the air here, and then you will be finishing your data sheets with some reading passages.